I'm your playwright-in-residence, Andy Black, and welcome to The Play's the Thing. I'm a playwright, and I teach playwriting. I'm currently working on my PhD in Theater and Performance Studies at the University of Missouri in Columbia, Missouri. This video is part of a series on topics related to playwriting. The topics are designed to stimulate and educate playwrights on concepts related to the development of a good play. So, you've decided you want to write a play. Where do you get your idea, and which idea might you select? In this video, I'll give you an overview of 5 places that playwrights frequently get ideas. I'll look at one of those places in more detail and some of the advantages of using that source of inspiration and some of the pitfalls. So here we go. The list I'm sharing is based on my having worked with lots of playwriting students over the years I've been teaching. I've identified themes and trends and seen the typical kinds of topics students come in with. And here they are. The first place to look for inspiration can be found in what I'll call the collective unconscious. People have been telling stories for a long time. There's research that suggests that there are a fixed number of classic stories that keep getting told and retold over and over again. You could borrow one of these classic stories that you've always liked and reinterpret it in your own voice. I'll look more deeply at this strategy in a few moments. A second place to look for an idea is in your own personal history. You may decide you want to write a play about how you met your partner, how you survived a divorce, or how you lost 100 pounds. People often come into my playwriting classes having had the experience of their friends telling them that they should write a play about something that happened to them. You may be one of those people. A third source of inspiration is historical events. History is full of untold stories of valor, inspiration, and heroism. You may have stumbled across an historical situation that speaks to you, and you feel it's a story worth telling. A fourth source of inspiration that might produce an idea is a social or political issue. There are many burning issues that society and culture face. People often want to write plays about some topic that's meaningful to them and then leverage the drama inherent in that topic. The last or fifth source is a general catch-all source. I'll call it pure inspiration or daydreams. Often some topic or idea catches our mind, it hooks us, and we can't seem to get unhooked. It may be a concept, an image, or even a phrase. We know that it means something to us, and we want to pursue it and see where it leads. That's the fifth source of ideas for plays. I could call it none of the above. So let's look a little more deeply at the first source of inspiration, which I called the collective unconscious. As I mentioned before, research suggests there's a fixed number of stories that keep getting told and retold. Different theorists have different ideas about how many there are. My writing partner, Patricia Milton, used to say, there are 2 basic stories. A man goes on a trip, a stranger comes to town. Kurt Vonnegut, the popular novelist who wrote Slaughterhouse-Five, said there were 8 plots. There are frameworks with 3 plots, some with 7, and some with as many as 20. My personal favorite taxonomy is by researcher Christopher Booker, who spent 27 years reading stories and came up with 7 basic plots. His book, The 7 Basic Plots, is over 700 pages long, so reading it is a big investment. However, I found it fascinating, and I think anyone interested in story would benefit from his ideas. The principle is that if you're writing a play, you can leverage the fact that other similar stories have been told before. This is how Romeo and Juliet became West Side Story. The musical, Wicked, is inspired by the basic story of The Wizard of Oz, told from a secondary character's point of view. Fairy tales are classic stories that get told over and over. Think, for instance, of Stephen Sondheim's Into the Woods.
Once upon a time,
I wish
in a far-off kingdom,
more than anything,
lived a fair maiden,
more than life,
a sad young lad,
more than joy. I wish,
and a childless baker,
more than life,
I wish, with his
more
wife,
than anything, more than the moon. I wish the king.
The first play I co-wrote with Patricia Milton is fundamentally based on a Greek myth. The story of Pygmalion, an artist who carved a statue of a beautiful woman out of marble and then fell in love with his own creation. In the original story, Aphrodite brought the statue to life, allowing Pygmalion to consummate his love. The elements of this story have been used over and over. George Bernard Shaw's play, Pygmalion, directly references the source material, and the musical remake, My Fair Lady, is well known. My writing partner and I took our first play from the stage comedy Born Yesterday, which is basically a Pygmalion story.
What's so funny that I'm blind
Practically
blind?
You're wonderful.
I'm sorry I look funny to you.
You don't. They make you look lovelier than ever.
You sound like one of them ads for eyeglasses.
Well,
We updated the situation so that the artist and the creation were both men. We also told the story from the point of view of the statue. One big advantage of borrowing a plot and updating it in your own voice is that familiar material is highly likely to get produced. A second advantage of borrowing a story is that some of the plotting has already been worked out for you. Plotting is an area that playwrights have trouble with. If you're working with a story that already has a clear narrative, you're less likely to run into issues with your plot. There are potential problems with borrowing a familiar story, though. Frequently, the source material turns out not to be as strong as one might like. Little Red Riding Hood, for instance, is a well-known tale. But in its most familiar version, Red Riding Hood is a weak protagonist. And using the story myself, I had to reconceive some of the key elements to make it work as I needed it to. I mentioned before that the way my writing partner and I conceived our first play positioned the statue or the creation as the hero of the story. This shift in perspective had unforeseen consequences, since the work of art is basically an inactive agent without a strong drive. We had to significantly reconceive the dramatic action to make sure that our protagonist was driving the story. It was trickier than it might sound. Now, some of you may be saying, I want to tell an original story, not a familiar one. I want to be creative. To you folks, I would say, save your creativity for your second play or even your third one. After you've mastered the craft and had some success, there will be plenty of time to start developing original ideas. In all honesty, I think one of the reasons I've had as much success as I've had is because I started with a simple, basic idea. So, the collective unconscious. That's the first place that many playwrights may get ideas for their play. As I wrap up this video, I'm going to leave you with a prompt. Think about your favorite fairy tale. If you were going to update it as a short play, how might you do that? Don't try writing dialogue yet. Just make some notes in your notebook. Let yourself ideate and fantasize and see where that leads you. And next time we get together, we'll look at a second place that playwrights might get ideas for plays. Your own personal history. If you want to follow me on social media, please do. I can be found on Facebook at Andrew Black Playwright. My Twitter handle is @AndyPlaywright, and my website is www.andrewblackplaywright.com. As always, I've enjoyed sharing my thoughts with you, and I hope you've enjoyed hearing them. I look forward to the next time we connect, and until then, stay creative.